So first off, thank you so much for being here on Montreal Rocks. We're here with Conor Riley, thank you, from the band Birth from San Diego, and they're about to release the new single, the new album, actually, debut album, Born, the 15th of July. So thank you so much, Conor, for being here today with me, with us in Montreal Rocks.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So first off, as I was saying, congrats on this debut solo album. And how does it feel like, you know, when you put together a new project and it's about to be launched out there?
It obviously feels pretty amazing. I mean, I think we've been working on this music for quite a while. Like, I want to say it's like maybe like four years in the making. I mean, really with like COVID and everything, it's been kind of difficult getting, you know, everyone together and then, you know, being able to record an album. So it wasn't really like an easy path to get here. So it's right now to actually see this come to conception is pretty awesome.
Yes. We're pretty close to this date, so I guess it's like really, and the name of your debut album, Born, like is really like it's out there, about to be. So I want to say just for the people who are watching, like that your band is you, Conor Riley, but also Brian Ellis, Trevor Must, and Thomas Di Benedetto. So hi guys, to you that couldn't be here with us today. And honestly, I have to ask you that, of course, because it's the first time that we chat. So if you can tell me a little bit of your background, because I know that I read that actually you were evolving sort of from a band called Astra, which is kind of fun because it's a sort of a prequel of Birth somehow. And so just a little bit of the band story. How did you guys get together? And also how you were saying 4 years to work on this project. So, and I have to say it's musically very complex. I love it, but the musical structure is really complex.
Thanks.
It's a compliment, of course, yeah. But I was impressed, honestly. There's a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it takes quite a while to kind of like put these songs together, I think. And I think I'm a perfectionist to some degree. But so I guess to like say how the band got together, it like starts quite a while ago, actually, like before the days of Astra. I met a couple of people, and we were another band called Silver Sunshine, which is kind of more like a singer-songwriter pop, like somewhat like Beatles influence, or like 60s kind of pop psych. And we started kind of getting more into like heavier psych and prog through that. And then we met our drummer Dave, who introduced us to Brian. And kind of when Brian joined, that's when we changed over to Astra, like around that time, because our sound kind of really changed a lot with the addition of him. And so like Brian and I had been just kind of like close as friends, but just musically kind of intertwined ever since. So we basically, you know, Astra was like the first band where it was kind of like we're writing an album and really took a long time on the songs. And like we, you know, went kind of a little bit further than I'd ever gone with any band with that, but it sort of like fizzled out a little bit. I think it gets kind of hard with everybody's life to like have these kind of touring schedules, and we just never really took those next steps. So I mean, Astra is still perhaps like still a band. We never like called it quits or anything, but tacitly.
You released two albums with Astra.
Yeah. It was a really good time, you know, really kind of like eye-opening. So like what kind of, you know, I think there it was like we just kind of took license to do whatever we want with the music. So it was like there are no rules of like what you could write. You could write a jazz part juxtaposed with like a classical part, and then go into, you know, a singer-songwriter thing. And that early era of like prog,
Yeah.
70s, King Crimson, Yes, all that kind of stuff is kind of like, I think, a really instrumental time for that, when it was like real kind of melding of different kinds of music. So that's kind of what Astra was about. And that kind of fizzled out in some way. Maybe it'll fizzle back, who knows? But you know, I think there's a lot of pressure with writing Astra music that kind of went away as soon as like I just thought like, you know, we could maybe just start something new, or maybe I could just write music and not have any expectations for it at all. And so that's kind of what some of the beginnings of the Birth songs were about. And then eventually Brian and I kind of had some ideas, and, you know, we stayed like friends and in close contact, you know, and so it just kind of naturally happened. Like, you know, we almost have enough material for an album, so let's just kind of make this happen. But so that was, you know, probably about like 4 years ago. And so like, you know, everybody else's lives and everything, getting people together was kind of challenging, especially when COVID came. I think
That was crazy. Two
in
tough years.
yeah, I mean, in some ways it was like harder to get things, like you couldn't play shows. I didn't really want to release an album during a time when you couldn't support it. So you know, it wasn't really like the right time. But you know, like in another way though, it kind of like gave us time to focus on the project a little bit more, because, you know, people weren't out touring months
Yes.
every year. Yeah.
So that was tough. But you were saying like 4 years to create like this intense project, because talking about the album that actually I was so glad that I had the chance to listen. So thank you. But I mean, there's a lot of psychedelic also, as you were saying, inspiration. I can hear a bit of, for sure, Pink Floyd, Cream, Deep Purple. There's a lot of that, and also I have to say I really really adores the guitar lines that you built. So you have 6 intense tracks. So I mean, because an album like sometimes is more, but you really kind of like re-entered the past somehow, with songs that are longer, and you gave much space, a lot of space to music, to melodies. So this is great. I want you to tell me more about this sound, because you said like it comes from Astra, and I actually heard a couple of songs from Astra, and that's why I called it a sort of prequel, because I can hear that for sure there is something, but the complexity that came into Born is different. So actually, literally, how would you describe this sound that has lots of past influences somehow, but it's still it's very, very modern, contemporary?
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of really hard to describe, like, you know, something that really comes from, you know, like a feeling more than like a logical sense, something to describe. But you know, kind of like a free forming thought. I think that, you know, in some ways, like Astra stuff was a little bit more prog oriented. So like, you know, some of the things we would write would kind of be like on the spot, kind of jamming, like, okay, someone will come to the table with an idea, and then we'll just kind of jam it out and throw out ideas until we find like another part. And then that's kind of like the journey we would go on to for sometimes like these 18-minute long songs. And I think that Birth isn't really like written in that way. It's kind of more like, I mean, to some degree it is a little bit, but not to the same extent. It's like, it's kind of more written in the sense of like, there's already like a vision for the song, so it maybe a little bit closer to like a singer songwriter
Okay.
kind of approach to it, but like with prog ideas and no boundaries to where it could go.
Yeah. I mean, like, since it's kind of literally sort of a trip, if you start from the beginning up until the last track. So did you guys put it together with the structure in mind of what song comes first, and then, build it up?
No, not really. I've always like tried to do that with albums, but it doesn't.
But because it worked. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
why I was like, kind of like,
Well, thanks. That's glad to hear that it works. Sometimes when I listen to the song orders, I'm kind of not sure. Like, oh, maybe it would have been better if this song was before that. But I think that I've always, in the time I've written music, I've always wanted to just be like, I'm gonna do some kind of like opera or like concept album approach, where like I have a clear vision and just write it in a linear fashion. But I mean, for me, like the inspirations for music kind of just, they're fleeting, wavering. Like they come and go, and so like one month I'll be more inspired than I've ever been and write a couple songs, and then the next month or 2 months like just don't have it in me for whatever reason. And so that's kind of why I think it, like a lot of the songs I was in very different places in my life, and so you know in that sense there's no way that it could really be like a linear type of thing. But I'm glad that to hear that like it sounds like it was.
oh, yes, definitely. It's very nice, to listen from the beginning up until the end, as like it's sort of as a structure somehow. And I'm curious because by itself it's a complex project. We said that already. But what was the biggest difficulties? Well, you said a bit about, we said about COVID. Of course, that was a difficult for sure. But in terms of maybe creatively or musically speaking, or, what was the biggest difficulties that you encounter while putting it together, creating it?
Hmm. I think it was kind of a lot of dealing collaboratively with everybody else. One of our main drummer, the drummer who was with us from the beginning of Earth, departed like
Mm.
at one point, and he actually played all the drums on the album, but it was kind of challenging getting that connection because he just had a lot going on in his life. I think COVID was probably a big part of that. So I think that was one of the bigger issues there. I think creatively speaking, there weren't really very many challenges because I kind of had time and no expectations to on the album. It wasn't like you have a timeline or anything like that.
So you put it together day by day, as you were saying before. Like one day you were inspired, so you write, and then you go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So in
exactly.
a certain way, COVID helped because of the incredible amount of time that we kind of have. So, but I mean, as I was saying, it's a complex and intense project. Um, I mean, it's fun because I read in your EPK, but also that's what I felt. There is a sort of futuristic, apocalyptic kind of sound too. And then I was so happy to read again that you're also a fan of Cormac McCarthy, and because The Road is one of my favorite books ever. And actually, yes, there's this input, cinematic input, while you're listening to the song. The songs, you can definitely imagine them as a soundtrack of something happening. And so, how the fact that you said also that you have a background as a scientist somehow. So how this part of you, which I believe is very strong, kind of interfered within the creative process, the way you write music, the way you look at music, the way you you give it birth to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say, you know, I think that's kind of I guess a deep subject. But I think that, you know, it's a little hard to explain, but in some sense, you know, the way that I like kind of got into science is kind of like, as it's not like really like a career choice. Like I never said like, okay, I'm going to start, you know, studying physics for, you know, I don't want to make money or anything like that. It was kind of more like I kind of went through some like darker times, I guess, in my like teenage years, and kind of like came out of that with like a lot of questions of like, you know, what is life about, you know, like how do I sorry, there's like a delay coming through, so okay, I think it's better
I
now.
hear you properly, but it could be.
Okay, all right, it's all right. It's kind of distracting, but it's all right. So anyway, sorry.
No, don't worry. That's the beauty of the recording and direct, like technology sometimes doesn't help.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish if there's a way to edit this out or something, but there is like this weird feedback.
Oh.
Anyway, I think it stopped. Okay, good. Let's start again. Yeah, so sorry about that.
No, don't worry.
But anyway, so I kind of like in my younger years kind of went through a little bit of like kind of like a dark kind of time, and then I kind of came out of that really kind of wanting to know a little bit more about like the world around me, and so that kind of meant like reading a lot about like, you know, the Bible and the Tanakh, and kind of just doing a lot of exploration of like what are all the answers, and through that I kind of really just started reading a lot about science and physics, and I just kind of really got obsessed. I mean, there's like a period of my life, I'd say, where like all I was kind of doing is just reading these like science books to try to like figure it out. And I guess, you know, in a musical sense, I was always kind of like using music as like a kind of creative outlet, and I kind of in some ways look at like science and music are kind of like similar in a way. Like they're both kind of languages, you know, where like um the language of science is kind of like, you know, taking these incredibly complex ideas and like boiling them down to like very, you know, the mathematical language of like logic. And like music is kind of almost on the other side of the spectrum, where it's like the language of conveying emotions, which is equally complex. And so like in some ways they kind of like feed into each other, where they're just kind of like ways to explain things. And the kind of like revelations that I make about my own life and my own conclusions about the meaning of life, like that I make through scientific understanding or kind of like religious or Buddhist ideas, or influence me a lot when it comes to like the music that I write.
Yeah. I can feel it, like, because when I said like the complexity, there's so much that you can actually open within each track that you created. So just rapidly, so where are you heading, like as a band as of now? Are you working on, I mean, after that complex project, but I mean, are you already working on something new? Do you have something in mind that you are heading to? It could be, as we were saying, like it's hard to define it. It could be a sound, type of sound, or it could be, you know, a next project where you want to include more elements, more inspirations.
Yeah, so we're actually kind of working on another album.
Wow.
right now. So we have like a few songs. I think it's probably going to take a little while for like for another album to come out, but that's kind of where it's going right now.
Okay. Nice. And if you would like, let's say, to tell your fans, like the people that's gonna listen to Born, do you have a sort of how can we call it, reading key to enter the album? Would you like to tell, like, to give
Like
them
like
that?
how they should. What's the best way to listen to it?
Yes, why not?
Huh. I'd say with an open mind, I guess. uh, Honestly, though, I just got the test pressings back not too long ago,
Okay.
and nothing kind of like beats the vinyl mastered
Oh,
version. It just like, I mean, I'm probably biased somewhat because I'm like a big record collector, but
okay.
like all my issues about the recording, like weird little things that are tweaking out on, kind of all went away when I put on the vinyl. So
Okay.
so I would say that on headphones, if you have a really good pair of headphones,
Okay.
and feel free to get into whatever state of mind you want to when you're listening.
That's nice. And just want to ask you, any tour? Like, are you guys gonna tour, do some lives?
Yeah, we have some. So like, we have a couple of shows in the works for just a record release, which
Okay.
it's looking like the record I think is going to be released on July 15th, and then the weekend after, we're playing in a few shows in California.
Okay, nice.
We're trying to work out for 2023 like a larger kind of European tour. So that's
Nice.
kind of, it's in the works, but it's not, nothing's been signed yet for that. So
Yeah, that would be thrilling. Very nice.
yeah,
Really
I'd love to do that.
be lovely. Any
Yeah.
chance you're coming to Canada, Montreal?
I've never, I've never actually played in Canada. I would love to.
Perfect. See? Not in winter, it's very cold. I can guarantee you, like here it's like not Californian weather. So
I'm actually from New York originally, just right across the border. So
okay, so
I'm from there.
perfect. So thank you so much, Conor, for your time. And I'm looking forward to see where Bertie will go, and looking forward to actually see the release on the 15th of July.
All right, great, thank you.